you have some nice words for Congressman Schiff last night?
Yeah.
Criticized him many times before.
So what I said, thought he's well spoken, did a good job of creating a tapestry, taking bits and pieces of evidence and emails and giving a rhetorical flourish, making the email come alive, sometimes effectively, sometimes a little over the top, but quite frankly, I thought they did a good job of taking bits and pieces of the evidence and creating a quilt out of it. So what I will tell my colleagues is the other side gets to talk and see if they can pull a thread here and pull a thread there and see if it holds up. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you about was the Biden connection. I don't know how many times it was said by the managers that the Biden conflict of interest allegations has been debunked and has been, there's no scintilla of evidence in terms of conflicts of interest and potential wrongdoing. I know a lot about the Trump family and their dealings in Russia. I don't know anything about the Biden connection to the Ukraine. So when the managers tell me this has been looked at and debunked, by who? So that's becoming relevant because they talked about it almost 50 times that the president had no reason to believe that anything improper occurred in the Ukraine with the Bidens, and he was just out to create a political advantage. The question is, will that withstand scrutiny? The point of fact is that nobody, particularly in your business, has done much looking at what happened in the Ukraine with Hunter Biden. You're going to hear more about that, and I'll tell you more tomorrow. So I supported Mueller's ability to investigate the president's campaign and pretty much everything Trump, because I didn't know what they were up to and if they did have any connections with the Russians. 2 years later, I'm good to go. Somebody other than me looked at the Trump campaign. Nobody has looked at what's happened in the Ukraine. So in 2014, Joe Biden's given the Ukraine portfolio by President Trump. It's a notoriously corrupt place. Within a month of being given the Ukrainian portfolio, the vice president's son is hired by Burisma, one of the most corrupt companies in the Ukraine.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
At a fairly exorbitant salary. They also, Burisma, hires John Kerry's stepson, and on and on and on. The point is that the prosecutor, who I think was corrupt, opened up a case in May of 2014 against Burisma, raided the president's home, Burisma's president's home, in February of 2016, and 6 weeks later, 7 weeks later, was fired. In 2015, the president of Burisma, Zolcheka, was named by our ambassador as somebody Ukrainian prosecutors should look at for corruption. The person who followed the fired prosecutor dropped the case against Burisma. I don't know. Doesn't pass the smell test to me. Why are you paying Hunter Biden? You can say they're corrupt, but they're not stupid. Does it make sense to hire the son of the guy in charge of the portfolio for the American government? And from the time they raided the president's home, Joe Biden called the president of Ukraine 4 times, got on a plane, and said, if you don't fire this guy, you don't get the $1 billion. I love Joe Biden, but I can tell you if the name was Trump, there'd be a lot of questions asked. So what I want out of all this, I want the public to understand that the claims they're making that there's no there in Biden's, nobody's looked, somebody should, and I've looked, and I've got a lot of questions. Were they buying insurance by hiring Hunter Biden? Because they sure as hell wasn't buying expertise.
Senator Graham, does that mean you want to
Yes,
hear from the
I will.
Chuck Schumer today said, it may have planted the first seed in their minds that perhaps the president did something very wrong here. Is that seed planted in your mind or any other Republicans' minds?
So let's hear from what the other side says. Did they selectively take testimony of witnesses to tell a story, which I thought was well told? Will it stand up? So they got caught. That's why they released the funds. The problem with cases like this is all of us are involved in this issue. So when they froze funds to the Ukraine, I was convinced by people at the Department of Defense that one of the reasons we want to take a time out is we've got a newly elected president we don't know anything about. I was told that by DOD. Now, as you fast forward, they're making the argument that Donald Trump's temporary freeze of funds caused the Ukrainian army to collapse and people died. Nothing could be further from the truth. They got more aid from the Trump administration, the Obama administration, and when you look at what people were saying on the ground, they had capability they never had before. So on September the 10th or the 11th, I called the White House and said, I'm okay with this guy. I'm going to vote with Durbin at the Appropriations Committee to make sure the aid flows for the rest of 2019. Rob Portman called the same day. It's pretty clear to me that when Rob called and I was going to join forces with Durbin, they were going to lose a vote. Now that's a theory of why the aid was released that I know about that you didn't hear. So the point is, let's see what the other side says. Then we'll make our decision about what the president actually did or didn't do. And you asked me about why I laughed, when the president saw the video.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
If he thought he was doing something wrong, he would probably shut up about it. In October, he's saying somebody needs to be looking at the Bidens. He told me that yesterday. The president believes that what happened in the Ukraine with the Bidens was inappropriate. Now, whether or not that will withstand scrutiny, I don't know. The president believes that the Ukraine interfered in our election. I can tell you without any doubt, it was the Russians who hacked into the DNC. It was not the Ukrainians. I cannot say that there was nobody in the Ukraine that had worked with Manafort that did a number on him. I don't know. All I can tell you is that from the president's point of view, he did nothing wrong in his mind, and in with this thought. If you're in a prior administration, does that mean no one can ever look at you? If you're going to be a potential opponent, does that mean your family can do anything? I don't buy that. Here's what I want. I'm going to make my vote based on the evidence assembled. I have said consistently, I'm not going to grant witness requests by the defense. They could have called all of these people if they'd wanted them in the House. They denied the president his day in court, and I'm not going to legitimize that. There are a bunch of people on my side who want to call Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. I want to end this thing sooner rather than later. I don't want to turn it into a circus. I think Schumer said yesterday, we're not willing to trade Joe Biden for anybody. I think I know why. I want the American people to pick the next president, not me. And so what I think is the best thing to happen is to have oversight of Ukrainian potential misconduct and move on to the election. I am not going to use my vote to extend the trial.
Senator Graham, Senator Graham.
Republicans have said they've heard nothing new in the opening argument.
Well,
Why not allow for new information, new evidence?
I think they say they've got enough to make their case. So hearing from John Bolton, this National Security Advisor of the President, they chose not to seek him. I would argue that if I were president and you wanted to call my National Security Advisor, I would be probably invoke privilege. But the one thing I can tell you is that we don't want to start a process where you can do impeachment in the House in 48 days, shut legal issues off and dump them into the lap of the Senate and deal out the courts. I'm not going to do that. There'll be precedents after Trump. And I did support a 2-year inquiry into the president. He turned over 1 million documents to the Mueller folks, and his lawyer testified. I guess what I'm saying is I thought that would be the end of this. What they did in the House has been partisan from day one. 48 days, no ability to have a lawyer. Most of the evidence is hearsay. No ability to call witnesses. And now you want me to fix that by destroying privilege. I'm not going to do it. And Republicans now, a pretty hard push to call Schiff because these stories about the whistleblower, that somebody on his staff actually coached a whistleblower. I'm not going to do that here. The country needs a break from this. We're going to listen to the case, see what the other side says about what was said yesterday, then I'm going to vote. That's what I'm going to do with my vote. If you think there's a whistleblower problem, we can deal with that outside of people.
Senator Graham,
would
do
have
you...
held up aid if Joe Biden wasn't running for president.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I think the president would held up aid if Rob Portman and I had not interviewed. I think he'd hold up aid tomorrow to almost anywhere. Have you not been listening to this, brother? He cut foreign aid by 21%. He wants to withdraw all of our forces from Africa. He wants South Korea to triple what they're paying. He has a worldview that we're being taken advantage of. In the phone call, he says, congratulations, the French and the Germans are not doing a damn thing. Well, I think they are. I had this conversation with him when I called him to tell him I was going to vote with the Democrats. He didn't mention Biden. He thinks we're chumps and being taken for a ride, and the Ukraine is sort of a hopeless endeavor. I don't. Now, that's just a worldview that has been consistent.
Senator Graham, does it give you pause that Fiona Hill, former National Security Council official, had basically testified that this Ukraine meddling theory that you're exploring is essentially Russian disinformation? And I have a follow-up question.
Sure, yeah, so about the Russian misinformation, that's something we should all be concerned about. When Rudy's running around in the Ukraine, people are providing, hey, let me tell you what they did. Everything should go through the Intel Committee because the Russians are trying to blame the Ukrainians and everybody else. I get that. This idea that the servers in the Ukraine, I don't buy that for a bit. CrowdStrike, that's got internet lore to it. It was the Russians who hacked into the DNC. Now, as to Manafort, there's stuff coming out of the Ukraine about his business dealings. I don't know if they were setting him up. But as to the Bidens, I can promise you, no one has looked at whether or not there was a conflict of interest, and no one has taken the time to explain how Hunter Biden got rich in the Ukraine and his father didn't know anything about it. Nobody has looked at whether or not when the prosecutor was fired, the next prosecutor refused, dropped the case on Burisma. Somebody needs to look at it. As much as I like Joe Biden, if it were Lindsey Graham or Mike Pence or Donald Trump, you would be looking.
And my follow-up question, I'm sorry,
I don't think Joe Biden's corrupt, but I don't think he's beyond being looked at. Here's what I would say. How many members of the body, children, are on foreign boards receiving this kind of money? I mean, if you look at the money they took from Burisma, Kerry's stepson, Hunter Biden, they gave donations to a fund in Delaware on behalf of both. I love Joe Biden, but I can tell you, I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and just watch the Trumps be looked at. I didn't ask for this. I will tell you that Joe Biden's one of the finest men I know, but he's got to explain this. Somebody needs to look at this. How did Hunter Biden get $1.5 billion to invest when he'd been in business for 60 days from China?
Senator,
That regard, you ever speak? Does this let Trump's defense team not argue about risk?
I don't. Here's what I think has been raised by the repeated assertions that the president had no reason to believe. There is no reason to believe something wrong happened in the Ukraine. If I had 5 senators on my side, are they trying to get us to call Joe Biden? I said, no, I don't think so. I think they're saying things about the Hunter Biden connection that will stand scrutiny. I don't know why they keep saying over and over, it's been debunked. Just show me where it has. There's no there. Explain all this that I've just told you. These are facts. I'm not making it up.
If President Trump is so concerned about corruption, why is he trying to weaken the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act?
I have my friends that are. I just want to. Like started. You want to start? I would just start by saying that what we're hearing the Senate Republicans say is there's nothing to see here. There's nothing new here. That's after a day of testimony when we heard about the most profound abuse of power alleged in our lifetimes by a president of the United States. That's in.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
Well, Adam Schiff can talk for 4 hours. Democrats can talk for 8 hours. They can talk for 24 hours. It's not going to change the facts. We've said it probably a million times, but that's the thing about facts is they never change. 4 facts will not change, have not changed, will never change. The call transcript shows no quid pro quo. We've all seen it. Seen it now for months. The 2 individuals on the call, President Trump and President Zelensky, have repeatedly said there was no pressure, no pushing, no linkage of security assistance dollars to the announcement of an investigation. There couldn't have been any pressure because probably most important, Ukrainians didn't even know aid was held at the time of the call. And then I guess the best fact, the most important fact, is they took no action. They never started an investigation. They never promised an investigation. They never announced they were even thinking about an investigation. And they got the meeting, they got the money, and they got the phone call from the president. So they can talk all they want, but it's not going to change those fundamental facts. And I'm sure that the White House Defense Team will point that out in a clear fashion at the appropriate time. We'll let Elise talk, then we'll take the question.
Thanks, Jim. As we saw yesterday, this is the weakest case for impeachment in the history of this country.
Dude, I'm shitting your
We
too,
continue to see how flimsy this case is, which is why there was bipartisan opposition in the House. There was bipartisan no votes when it comes to impeachment. I anticipate that we will continue to hear lies and half-truths from Adam Schiff today. He also doesn't include important testimony that every single witness testified that he or she had no direct evidence of impeachable offenses, high crimes, misdemeanors, treason, or bribery. So Adam Schiff and his team can continue to speak for hours to the American public. Certainly in my district, they're tuning this out. They want us to get back on behalf of the American people and get back to work. And they want us to work this out in the election. The American people have a right to decide at the ballot box.
I would just say one comment about what the chairman of House Judiciary, Manager Nadler, said on the floor yesterday was outrageous. It was offensive to us. He effectively accused the Republican senators of being engaged in some sort of cover-up. It really was astonishing for him to say that on the floor of the Senate. I think that's why Chief Justice spoke up. He's normally very stoic, as you all know, Chief Justice Roberts, and he stepped in and corrected that and reminded them of the decorum that's necessary and the level of respect that's necessary. I think that went the wrong way. And from our perspective, as long as these managers continue to put on this case, I think it's counterproductive. I think they're losing support rather than gaining it. And we're glad that this will wrap up today so that the president can finally put on his case. This has not been a fair fight until right now. And the president, the White House, all of us are anxious for those real facts to be put out there. And we're glad for those 2 days to go forward. We'll take some questions.
We're glad to take some questions. Peter Schumer, he had a press conference this morning. He called the White House defense team unprepared, confused, and trending towards conspiracy.
I mean, you don't even know where to start. Yeah, you just want to laugh.
I can comment on that. Chuck Schumer is the one that's unprepared.
to actually come down here and make that kind of assessment. I can tell you, they spent hours and hours and hours. And to suggest when your team gets to go without a rebuttal that the other team is unprepared, they haven't even taken the field yet. And so when we look at that, it is critically important that we understand only half the story is being told. And I can tell you, it's the false half of the story that's being told. And so for Chuck Schumer to come out and do that, he's trying to spin a narrative that all of you that covered this in the House, you already know that there's another side of the story, and the American people very soon will know that as well. And so to suggest that there's some lack of credibility for the president's defense team is ignoring what's happening in the room. You can read the body language of the senators, and did Chuck Schumer come out and applaud Chairman Nadler for his comments? Did he rebuke Chairman Nadler? Well, he shouldn't.
As Democrats have pointed out, Ambassador Bolton has a book deal and sort of telling his story. Does that
I don't think a book deal should influence who testifies or who doesn't testify at an impeachment proceeding. They had a chance to call their witnesses in the House. Remember, they called all the witnesses. We didn't get to call any. We had no subpoena authority, and the witnesses we asked to come to the hearings were all Adam Schiff's witnesses that actually we thought were somewhat helpful to us, but we didn't get to call any of our witnesses, so they had their opportunity to do that then. They didn't pursue it. Whether there'll be witnesses next week or not, that's up to the United States Senate.
Are you concerned? How concerned is the president? Obviously, this is a rare time where he cedes the spotlight for 72 hours to the lawyers, the prosecutors. Obviously, yesterday we saw Jay Sekulow, the legal team, come out. You guys have come out multiple times to make your cases go. How concerned is the president that in this absence of his team, a message needs to get across to Americans so that one side is
Well, I mean, the facts are all on the president's. When you got the facts on your side, you're pretty darn confident.
Tweeted 140 plus times
well,
yesterday.
and talking about the facts being on his side, that's fine. The president likes to tweet, he likes to communicate, and that's one of the reasons the American people like him and support him, and he's done such a good job as president. But the facts are on his side. So, I come back to the basics. This all started with his phone call. The next day, the very next day, July 26th, President Zelensky has a meeting with Ambassador Volker, Sondland, and Taylor. And guess what he said at that meeting? The call was fine. The call was great. But yet, Adam Schiff wants to spin this into that's how ridiculous this whole process has been.
Are you concerned about the Republican defense starting on a Saturday where few people maybe watching, fewer people?
I think already fewer people are watching. That's Adam Schiff talking for 4 hours. I think a lot of the networks went away to other programming. So I don't know that that's a concern. Again, I think the American people see it for what it is. Whether it's Saturday, whether it's Sunday, whether it's at midnight, the facts don't change.
Mr. Jordan, when you say that they didn't announce an investigation, are you implying that if they had, it would have been inappropriate?
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
No, I'm just saying that's been the Democrats' case. They said there had to be an announcement to get a phone call, to get a meeting, and to get the security assistance dollars released. Well, guess what? They got the phone call on July 25th. They got the meeting on September 25th. They got
Not
the money
in the White
on
House.
They've
never gotten a White House meeting.
Well, I think it was
Have you ever gotten a White House
I think it was Dr. Hill who said they wanted a meeting with the president. Where it's at is not that big a deal. September 11th, they got the money, and there was never an announcement. There was never any quid pro quo.
Congress members, you're all advisors. What does that mean, other than speaking matters? Just kind of foundational question. What do you guys
Well, many of us are deeply involved, obviously, in the process in the House, having kind of sat in most depositions, which almost every individual here did sit in those, or participating in the House Intelligence Committee or the House Judiciary Committee. So having an understanding of the process fouls and how unfair Adam Schiff ran this process, that's important to point out the hypocrisy of his witness claims, for example, when Republicans were not able to call a single Republican witness, only witnesses that the Democrats wanted to call, how rushed this was in the House, and also reading every single word of the depositions, every single shred of witness testimony all of us have read. So we're deeply familiar, and if we can be helpful to make sure that the counsel's office knows all that, that's what we're here for.
For clarity, weren't Morrison and Hale and Volker, they were all Republican witnesses, were they not?
They were called by Democrats. We did formal requests of additional witnesses that were Republican only, and not a single one of those witnesses was called those individuals had already been deposed and had already done depositions.
Senate Republicans have said the House should have done the work. They needed to subpoena these guys when they had the opportunity. Would you welcome the House beginning the subpoena process?
Well, listen,
of those
Adam Schiff
individuals
had
like John Bolton and others. It's not too late if they choose to.
Adam Schiff had his opportunity, and they chose to take back the subpoena. This was
They could
rushed.
still do
This
it.
was on an arbitrary deadline. They wanted to get this done before the holidays because they're on an arbitrary deadline. I'm sorry that I'm not sorry that their case is so flimsy, but it's very clear that it is flimsy, and they didn't come in with a strong case.
Yeah, I think that Congresswoman Stefanik makes a key point. You call your witnesses, you subpoena your witnesses before you vote on the articles of impeachment. You know, now to come back and say all of a sudden our case is weak, which they're not saying that. I'm saying their case is weak. The American people are seeing that their case is weak. But to suggest now that we're going to have these additional witnesses, when they went to subpoena the witnesses, what did they do with that subpoena? They withdrew them. Why? Because they didn't trust the judiciary to side with them. So now we have the Democrats saying that the executive branch under Donald Trump is not to be trusted, and also the judiciary is not to be trusted. I can tell you who shouldn't be trusted is Adam Schiff and the House managers that are trying to perpetrate this lie on the American people.
Mr. Madden, you guys speak to the president on a near daily basis. What's the president's mood right now?
And listen, the president believes that his defense team has done a good job. They've done the appropriate amount of energy. They have not worn out their welcome like Adam Schiff has worn out his welcome before my Senate colleagues. I can tell you, if you're in there, not only do you want to take no-dos, but you want to take an aspirin to get rid of the headache from the repetitive arguments that continue to be made. So the president is feeling good, not only about the defense team's preparation and execution, but the fact that the facts are on his side. And so it's a good day. Yeah, really right now I think a lot of that depends on where the Democrats go with their arguments. I can tell you, you don't need the full 24 hours to rebut the false narrative that's being put forth with Adam Schiff. At the same time, I think that's going to be a game day call. Thank you.
Looking towards the president, should the president be said that abuse of power should never be an offense?
Look, the founding fathers are very clear about this. The constitutional standard is very high. You look at the pure and clear language of the Constitution. It's treason, bribery, high crime, misdemeanor. When you look at the evidence of all that, and this is what Professor Dershowitz is going to explain to the Senate when he gets his chance, probably on Saturday, the background of this is that the infraction had to be so great, on par with treason or bribery, that would be the threshold. So the job right now in our constitutional structure for these members, this U.S. Senate, is to determine whether these two articles are valid, whether they're credible, whether they actually have a case for impeachment, and they do not. And that's what the case is going to explain to the Senate. I think they're going to see it very clearly. And all this talk about witnesses and documents is going to be irrelevant because it was premature for them to determine that on the front end. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
I think it's fine. A lot of people are going to...
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.